they was like, no, don't go to HR. And I basically told him, he gonna say that the clock had been, he found out that the clock was moving a little too fast. That's what my supervisor said when we had our one-on-one. And that's why the other guy
All right.
was saying,
I'm
but
finna
my whole thing is,
click
whether I
over
was
here.
dead or not, why are you watching me? Nobody else is watching me. You only make sure I come in. But you not my supervisor, so why should you even care?
All right, we live. Y'all give me just a second. We're gonna get started. Oh, I'm on this end too. Hold on.
You know what I'm saying? It's just because you might have two things you need to follow up on.
Hey, Kofi, what channel you on YouTube?
Monster Warrior Clan.
Okay.
Y'all give me just a second, man. We're gonna get started. If y'all don't mind, man, like the show and share the show. Damn, I'm on the wrong thing too. Y'all bear with me, give me just a second.
This is what I'm saying. Then you gonna say, when I say something about HR, you gonna I see that you're taking it serious. Oh, now you see that I'm taking it serious, because I'm gonna have people looking at y'all and start playing with me. And he said I had to go through that, but the whole time I'm going through it, I'm like, I bet this is because I'm a black female. Like, this is probably why this is going on. Because if this was anybody white, they wouldn't be able.
Hold on, y'all. Sure, seeing.
Guess what I told my supervisor? I said, yeah, I see a lot of
sharing to a few groups.
30 minutes early for work, but I'm not one of them. I want to come in here at 4:59 a.m. every morning. I gotta be there 5. Guess what? I'm walking through the door at 4:59, and that's something that y'all gonna have to understand as a team. Like, yeah, I could be that employee that come in 15 minutes early. Yeah, and I might be the best candidate for a position if you had to choose between me and somebody else. Like, you would probably choose the person that comes to work 15 minutes early.
Y'all bear with me just a second. I'm finna get started trying to share the show to a few of these groups. I'm not finna share to all of them. Too many to share to. Too many. Oh, man. Alright, I ain't sharing it nowhere else. But y'all, if y'all get a chance, man, share the show for me, man. Share the show. Like the show. Let me get back over here because I can't even see myself. Where I'm at. Alright. First I want to say Black African Power. ETM Hotep, Dua Duau, Dua Aku, Fatmu Alafie, Fatmu Iwariwi, Dua Duau, Dua Aku. I always want to give honor and praises to the ancestors, because without the ancestors, we wouldn't be here. We are our ancestors. I got Brother Vasa Nicolo so far on the panel. I think Brother Sean is on the JOB. Peace to the family, peace to the family. Bro Vasa, you got anything, man, before I get started with the show?
Peace to the audience, and continue to like and share. And interesting to see where you're gonna go with this.
Yeah. All right. Can y'all hear me loud and clear out there, man? Before I get started, can y'all hear me loud and clear? Yeah, I know you're at work, Sean. Peace to Militant Goddess. Peace to Ogun Bolo Yi, Ikabo Dynamic. Peace, Brother Chavez. Peace, LB. Peace to all the other ones that may be looking. And peace, Sister Shanette Summers. Peace, peace. Can y'all hear me good out there before I get started? Am I loud and clear, Vasa?
Yeah, but you know we got that delay. So
Yeah, okay. Let me know. Okay, it say I'm Chafe say I'm loud and clear. All right, let me share my screen on my computer. It's been a minute, y'all. I'm a little rough. I ain't been live in about 2 months now. I forgot how to share my screen. Oh man, hold on, y'all. Uh, I'm laughing, but I'm okay. All right. Let me know, y'all, if y'all can see my screen. Hold on. All right. I guess I'm sure I'm looking too, man. I don't see. All right, I see it on now. Let me see if it's pop up and we're gonna jump into it. And again, peace to the family, Black African Power. Appreciate those for again for tuning in. And peace to those that may come later on in the archive to check out the presentation. But all right, the name of the presentation is called Let's Talk About Voodoo. Is Vodoun and Voodoo the same thing? I did a presentation. Um, well, we'll get into that presentation, but this is part two. This is part two. I did a presentation and I'll show it in a few minutes that I did a while back. But before I get started, I always have to put a disclaimer out there before I get started. My disclaimer is I am not a teacher, but merely a student sharing information. And that information provided is for the educational purpose only. And if you are in doubt, do the research and have it verified by someone qualified. I reserve the right to change the focus of this presentation to shut down, sell, or exchange the terms of the use at my own discretion. All trademark, design rights, copyrights, registered names, mottos, logos, avatars, signals, or marks used or cited by this website are the property of their respective owners. I reserve the right to add information as it comes available or adapt changes and improve information as it comes available in the future. Inputs wanted, changes, additions, deletions are encouraged. I always have to put a disclaimer out there before I get started. And again, I'm the type of brother where I encourage input, and if I make a mistake or I make an error, I don't mind going back and clarifying the error or the mistake that I made. I think that's the only way that we all will be able to grow, and not be big headed. But again, I don't mind input. And again, if I make an error or inaccurate on anything, I don't mind going back and clarifying that I made a mistake and changing that mistake. All right, let me shut my camera down. Well, it's all right. I guess I can leave it up. Peace, Sister Trismus. Uh, we got somebody already talking crazy in the chat, Brother Sean. I see you done deleted Shanita Summers. What's her name? Peace Gullah S guess C. So I guess we got some foolish. Again, I always start off with E-Y Pele, which means good character. I always start off with E-Y Riri. So please, if you don't have any good character, please do not come in the chat because you will be deleted. Your message will be deleted and you will be blocked. This is my saying, as I learn, we all learn. My other saying, let's get this culture. And again, a lot of us don't understand our own culture, and I understand why we don't understand our culture. But Kofi Piesie TV and Mossy Warrior Clan YouTube channel is about bringing your culture back. All right, again, this is let's talk about voodoo, and is voodoo and voodoo the same thing? Now this is part two. I did part one 2 years ago. It's called What is Voodoo, and it's voodoo from West Africa, and it's voodoo what Hollywood and TV told us. So if you missed this presentation, you can go back and check it out in the archive. It's on Kofi Piesie TV. Is to clear up some misconceptions about what voodoo or what voodoo is. A lot of us have a lot of spooky interpretations. A lot of that has to do with Hollywood, with the movies. A lot of it has to do with the educational system to turn us away from our culture, and we truly don't understand what it is all about. So originate originated. So we're going to talk about in this presentation, where did Vodoun originate originated? Also, is Voodoo and voodoo the same thing? So we're going to talk about is Voodoo and is voodoo the same thing? What does Voodoo and voodoo means? So let's first talk about what does voodoo means. Voodoo is an ancient religion practiced by some 30 million people in West Africa, nation of Benin, Togo, and Ghana. With its countless deities, animal sacrifice, and spirit possession, voodoo as is known to the rest of the world. So voodoo, which later became voodoo, it originated in West Africa. So voodoo is a indigenous tradition in West Africa, specifically in Benin, which used to be called Dahomey, Togo, and you can find it in Ghana. So it originated in West Africa first. The origin of voodoo is rooted in West Africa, modern day Benin, which was called Dahomey, as I just said. At one point, Benin is regarded as the birthplace of this religion, and that the name voodoo itself means spirit. So voodoo means spirits. For those that may not know what voodoo means spirit, or it means the essence of God or deity in the local Fon language. It has been suggested that voodoo is a West African. I'm finna have to hold on, y'all. I'm finna have to hold on. Let me see if I got. That's cool. I'll drop it down here. It is a local Fon language. It has been suggested that voodoo is a West African involved in the ancient traditions of ancestors' worship and animism. But saying the word voodoo anywhere in the world, it ties to darkness and evilness. And I'm gonna say that again, but saying the word voodoo anywhere in the world, it is tied to darkness and evil. Evil. And it is a reason why it is tied to that. Again, propaganda has been pushed on this West African way of life, this West African tradition. And specifically, it started in the 18th century. And it started in the 18th century with the Catholic Church. The Roman Catholic Church wanted to declare after voodoo spread it during the Atlantic slave trade, and it reached Haiti. And it reached Haiti, and the Catholic Church no longer wanted the state religion to be voodoo. So they began to push propaganda past certain types of laws where people was banned um, to practice their tradition. Uh, Also, there was writers that was writing certain things that was suggesting certain things. This Spencer St. John was one individual was also during the 18th century that was also pushing prejudiced views and writing about this system um, and demonizing it. You know what I'm saying? Demonizing it also and belittling the people and the people that practice this tradition that they call voodoo. That was first voodoo and then it became voodoo. That's why I asked in the presentation, what is voodoo? I mean, is voodoo and voodoo the same thing? Which we're going to find out if voodoo is voodoo and voodoo the same thing. And I'm going to probably do a presentation on that, talking about the emperor who was there, the emperor who came later, who, in my own opinion, thought, in my own opinion, um, had that was African descent, had didn't want anything to do with being African, practicing their indigenous tradition. He wanted to please the Roman Catholic Church at this specifically time in the mid 18th century. So I may be doing a presentation talking about those first two emperors, talking about the Roman Catholic Church, why they wanted to demonize or set out a smear campaign. Even this individual from this British writer who came and began to write prejudice things about the tradition and the people in Haiti. But we're going to talk about how it got to Haiti in this presentation. We're going to talk about how it got to Louisiana in this presentation, but it started in the 18th century with this writer, with the Roman Catholic Church, on it becoming dark, it becoming evil. And then later on, as it began to develop in Louisiana, which is in the United States, it begins to develop. You start to see Hollywood start to demonize it with their movies. So we get a lot of information from the movies, from the perceptions from the movies. We get a lot of it from them writing about it in their books, telling different stories about it. You know what I'm saying? So here it is a bad word for bad religion. In the United States, voodoo has been sensationalized by Hollywood, as I stated, demonized by Christians, missionaries, and paranoid in New Orleans tourist shops. I even talk about this in the first presentation in part one that I talk about. I talked about it a little bit too, specifically dealing with it not from um, in Haiti and during the 18th century, during the Roman Catholic Church wanted to make the state religion in Haiti Christianity, or make it the state religion Catholicism. Um, but I talk about it from the perspective of in the United States and how uh, Hollywood, the movies, TVs, even Christianity and certain other religions began to demonize it. But it started in the 18th century. So I may come back and do a whole article on that, talking about the emperors, one of the British guys who did it. One of the emperors turned his back on it, did this religion, even tell a story that about brother the Candyman version that brother Vasa shared with me. I had to go back and do some research on that. So I may entwine all that into an article. It may come out to be a presentation. I don't know which one I'm gonna do yet. But
Can I jump in so we don't confuse anybody?
go ahead.
Um, I'm interested to find out if Mackendale inspired the modern day version of what we know as Candyman, with the parallels of him losing an arm, the rumors of him turning into a fly versus Candyman turning into a bee, but also if he's maybe possibly one of the first practitioners to use Vodoun in Haiti as a weapon against oppression. And if anybody in the chat has any information they can throw in, we would appreciate that as well.
Right. All right. West African was once known as a slave coast because it was at the center of the transatlantic slave trade for centuries. African slaves brought voodoo with them to plantations in Brazil, Haiti, Cuba, and Louisiana. So this is how Vodoun, before it became voodoo, Vodoun, which is a West African tradition, which is started in Benin, Togo, um, and Ghana. You see these traditions in those different countries in West Africa. And via the Atlantic slave trade, this is how the tradition spread it. It spread it onto these different plantations uh, in Brazil, Haiti, Cuba, and eventually into Louisiana. This is where we see it a lot of those tradition practice in New Orleans specifically, and other places in Louisiana. But 400 years later, the religion remained a central part of spiritual life for a million livings in West Africa. Ironically, it was enforced immigrations of enslaved Africans from different ethnic groups that provided the circumstances for the development of voodoo. European colonialists thought that by desolating the ethnic groups, this could not come together as a community. However, in the misery of slavery, the transplanted Africans found that their fate a common thread. They began to invoke not only their own gods, but to practice rites others than their own. So, and this is nothing new. We see this a lot. We see that during uh, colonialism, not only colonialism, but uh, uh, the Atlantic slave trade, we start to see that they we had to infuse our own traditions in with the slave masters tradition, and this was the only way we was able to continue to keep our practice or our way of life relevant, was to synchronize our systems with the slave masters uh, system or its way of life in order to keep it relevant. So again, this is nothing new. We talked about this a lot. Secretism with a lot of other different spiritual systems. You see this a lot all across the board in Africa, where you see a group of people coming in, uh, whether it's the French, whether it's the British, whether it's the Portuguese, whether it's the Spaniards, whether it's the Arab. We see these people coming in, and we begin to synchronize our way of life or our traditions with theirs. So no different here in the voodoo or the Voodun system. We begin to synchronize the slave master religion with our own. In the process, they commingled and modified rituals in various ethnic groups. The results of such fusion was that the different religion groups integrated their beliefs, thereby creating a new religion, voodoo. The word voodoo comes from the West African word Vodun, meaning spirit or deity or the essence of God, what we call the soul, what we call the spirit, or what we may call energy. It is the essence of whatever you may call that higher force. So voodoo is something that was created in these other places via the Atlantic slave trade. So voodoo comes from Vodoun, a tradition out of West Africa that originated in Benin, which was called Dahomey, Togo, and you can see it also practiced in Ghana. But you also see a coon practice in Ghana as well. Um, the word voodoo comes from the West African word voodun, meaning spirit. The Afro-Caribbean religion mixed practice from many African ethnic groups such as the Fon, the Nago, the Igbo, the Dahomies, the Congos, the Senegalese, the Hausas, the Kapalos, the Mandajis, the Mandinga, the Angolis, the Libyans, the Ethiopians, and the Margachis. Voodoo temple on the slave route near the door of no return. This is Oda on the Benin coast. So this is just a visual. Okay, like slide 10 stated a few slides back, the word Voodoo means spirit. So again, the word Voodoo means spirits or the essence of God. This is what the word Voodoo means. It is used to denote both African deities, Voodoo, Libi, all deities or gods, and the worship of the deities Voodoo, Sin, the belief in the worship of Voodoo. The meaning of Voodoo is beyond the various representations of or emblems that we may see, because Voodoo is in fact an invisible spirit force that inhabits those representations. In view of this, the Fanu or the Fun people called Voodoo by many names. The Voodoo is referred to as the Nabudu, a principle that cannot be explicated, a force whose point of departure is perceptible. So we see this also a lot in other different traditions where, and I wanted to clear something up because on the first presentation that I did, I talked about the luau's. So again, when the presentation, we know that voodoo or voodoo originated in West Africa, Benin, Togo, and Ghana, and it spread it via the Atlantic slave trade into the Caribbean, Brazil, and Haiti, and then into Louisiana. So, and through the synchronicities where we see where a lot of the our way of life was outlawed once we was into slavery or we was conquered. So we began to synchronize so that we wouldn't lose our way of life. So we began to synchronize their way of life with our way of life. Um, so again, you can see, damn, I'm losing. Okay, I said the luau's. So in Haiti, the lesser deities will be called the luau's. In West Africa, in Voodoo, it will be called they will be called Vouduns. Voodoo. So, and I addressed in part one, I always said the luau. So in Haiti, they will be called the luau, the lesser deities. The lesser deities in West Africa, they will be the Vooduns. And again, we see this a lot where you have a supreme deity and then you have the lesser deities. When you go to the Akun system, they have their own lesser deities. You go to the Igbo tradition, the Odinani, they have their lesser deities. You go to Kemet, they have their own lesser deities. The Wintis tradition, they have their own lesser deity. The Fakru tradition, they have their own lesser deities, and so forth. Um, Another name for the Vooduns is Nugun Gun, a concept of meaning is deep. The Fon people also call Voodoo by the name Ujawu, a thrilling principle that must be reversed, the spiritual force that is beyond anyone's genie. Yahweh or Voodoo, Yahweh, yea, which, and also you see the word Yahweh, and I may be pronouncing it wrong. Even you have some people with the word Yahweh or Voodoo, Yahweh, Yah, Salat for spirit, Hehwe, sun, purity. Hence, pure spirituality is another name by which the Fanu or the Fun people call the Vooduns. And you have some people out there that gets the perception that the Vooduns or the Voodun or Voodoo is Yahweh. And that's a whole nother different story. Um, I may talk about that a little bit in here as well. It is another name by which the Fanu call Voodun. Finally, the Fon people call Voodun by yet another name, Han, blood source of life. The essence of voodoo. Within voodoo, the society, there is no accidents. Practitioners believe that nothing and no event has a life of its own. That is why Vox Dix, U2, the universe is all one. Each thing affects something else. Scientists knows that. Nature knows it. Many spiritualists agrees that we are not separate. We serve as part of one. That's why Voodoo means spirit or the essence. The essence, I'll get it in a minute, Tootie, is the essence of God. We all come from that one force. So in essence, what you do unto another, you do unto you because you are the other. And I'll give an example of what they're talking about. Okay, we always resort to this higher force as light or a light being, right? Or this type of energy force, right? Which we know energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It can only be transformed from one source to the next. So I give this analogy. I give this analogy a lot. If we take this light board, again, we always resort to this high energy as light. And you take a light, you look at your light bulb and it's one light bulb and you take a box and you place a box at the top of the light bulb. If you poke 1,000 or 1,000,000 holes in that box and you pull it up against this light, put the box over the light, you have 1,000,000 specks of light that is coming from this one source of energy. So this is what it's talking about when many spiritualists agree that we are not separate. We are all served as a part of the one. So in essence, what you do unto another, you do unto you, because you are the other. Some say that God separated himself from himself to know himself. Voodoo, view you. We are mirrored of each other's soul. Good is manifested through the spirit of the ancestors who can bring good or harm and must be honored in ceremonies, which we see this a lot in a lot of other traditions, not only in voodoo, but in a lot of other African traditions in West Africa, South Africa, East Africa, Central Africa, and etc. That they believe that the ancestors can bring good or they can bring bad, must be honored in ceremonies. They are sacred cycles between the living and the dead. Believers ask for their misery to end. Rituals include prayer, drumming, dancing, singing, and animal sacrifice. This here is a voodoo shrine and Abi Benin. Mahu, the supreme God. Brother Any Haret Sean Calfunny, my brother, he posted something to other day. Well, might have been Friday if I'm not mistaken. He posted something about the deity. And in Vodoun, the deity is Mahu. It goes by other different names as well, he or she. Mahu, the supreme God. The South Benin culture area of the Fon, the Gun, the Mano, or the U people is characterized by a similar conceptions of divinity, belief in existence of God in general. This God recognized as the supreme being, the transcend as referred to by the term Mahu. And excuse me if I'm not pronouncing the name right. According to the testimony of Fur Paul Falcon, everyone professes an existence and the ropes a fun automatic expression, which means everything that exists. This supreme being is called Mahu, that God is the creator of the universe, of mankind, and all that exists in general accepted. And this notion of God exists among those people before the arrival of the great monotheistic religion, Christianity, Islam. With the fund, for example, the god Mahu is also named Ksagbo Lise, Dada Segbo, Simido, or Jibedoto, depending on whether one is stressing the creation of Mahu or Dada Sagbo, the principle of being Samido, or the life of Jibadoto. And again, excuse me if I'm mispronouncing the name, but these are other names that the supreme deity also goes by. Again, Sakbo Lise, Dada Sekbo, uh, Mahwo, Dada Sakbo, the principle being Semido, or life, GB Doto. Nana Buluku, an androgynous supreme god. From Nana Buluku comes the twin deities, Mahu and Lisa. Mawa Lisa, also spelled Mahu Lisa, Mahu Lisa, is therefore the first on the list of primary deities in the Dahomey Voodoo pantheon. So now we're talking about Nana Buluku, which is a androgynous female, as the female and male characteristics. And Nana Buluku came with two twin deities, Mawa Lisa. Mawa Lisa, also spelled Mawa Lisa, Maha Lisa, Maha Lisa. And then these are the different names that I gave you on the previous slide. And therefore, the first of the list of the primary deities of the Dahomey Voodoo's pantheon, Mawa or Lisa, also called Segbo Lisa, or the creator couple of heaven and earth. Mahwa, the female priest principle, corresponds the two moons, to the moon, as associated with the night, fertility, motherhood, gentleness, forgiveness, rest, and joy, all characteristics that one sees in a woman. Lisa, the male principle, corresponds to the sun and is also associated with the day heat, work, power, war, strength, toughness, and transcends all things of characteristics in men. You see this in a lot of culture where the moon is associated with uh, with the feminine energy of associated with the woman, and you see in certain cultures where the sun is associated or characterized with the with the male or with men. The absolute transcendent attribute of Mawa does not allow one to conceive of his relationship of a monster with humanity. Yet the human spirit needs a relationship of sapphic proximity, of easy access to the supreme being, and since creation manifests the creator, man finds sacred force in certain phenomena or situations that are beyond his understanding. It is through this vision of the world that Voodoo emerge. I'm gonna read that again. Yet human spirits needs a relationship of savic proximity, of easy access to the supreme being. And since creation manifests the creator, man finds sacred forces in certain phenomenons in situations that are beyond his understanding. It is through this vision of the world that the Voodoons emerge. So again, in a lot of the Vodouns, which are the lesser deities, you have the supreme deity Mahwa Mahwa Lisi, Sakbun Lisi, and you have the lesser Vooduns, which there are thousands of these Vooduns. Like in the Ifa, you may have the Orishas, and the Akun, you may have the Bosoms, and Kemet, you may have the Netra'uds, so forth. These lesser deities are forces in nature. These are elements in nature, forces in nature. And these forces of nature are told in different stories, different phenomena they may have happened in their society and their culture via Mother Nature. These different stories and mythologies are emerged, are told, and passed down. From the people of South Benin, Mahwa is good, but he does not concern himself directly with man. So Mahwa can also be associated as male as well. Again, it has the masculine and the feminine principle. Mahwa Lisi. Directly with man, he is an omni, but has delegated his power to the Voodoons. And again, in the Voodoo tradition in West Africa, the lesser deities are called the Voodoons. And in the voodoo tradition in Haiti, which Voodoo spread it via the Atlantic slave trade into these different plantations, they became the Loals, the lesser deities. But we'll get a little bit more into that in the presentation. Recognized as Mahwa creations according to the fond expression Mahwa we do Von Lee or Mahwa representation among men, signs, and divinities in months of response to the spiritual desires of mankind. Voodoo designates all that is sacred of all power coming from the invisible world to influence the world of the living. Everything is a mystery. For this reason, it is explicit distinct from Mahu. But we find that there is no actual worship of the latter in the tradition except certain spontaneous prayers or reference such as Mahu na blow. God will act. Kept Mahu ton. May God decide thus, used on different occasions. The Voodoons receive their worship because of their proximity to man compared to Mahu. Firstly, the Voodoons are considered as the sons of Mahu, God the Creator, hence are the first seven most important of these. And again, the Voodoons are nothing but forces in nature. Again, forces in nature. And again, there are thousands of different Voodoons, these different lesser deities. There are thousands of them. I'm not going to go through all of them. There are a lot of them. And a lot of the Voodoons are similar to some of the other lesser deities in other different cultures. You may see something that you may recognize in another different lesser deity in the Ifa tradition. You may see something in the Odinani tradition, the Odinani tradition of the Igbo people, some similarities with their lesser deities. You may see some similarities with the Gulu Wankulu in East Africa and their lesser deities. So I'm just gonna go over a few of them, not all of them, because there is thousands of different Vodans. The Sakpata, this is the eldest son of Mahwa, to whom the earth was entrusted. Eya Vodoun, the Vodoun of the earth, his power is fear and terrify. His attributes are the arm of smallpox, uh, scissors, a chain of black and white and red spots. Sapat has many sons, including the Vodouns of leprosy, Adad Tanja of the incurable sores, uh, Kek this is the Voodoo of the sky, who manifests himself in thunder and lightning. So again, I say you may see different similarities in other different traditions, thundering and lightning. So you may look at him and say he may have similarities and some of the same characteristics as in the Ifa tradition with Shango. Um, he is Mahwa's second son and considered a Voodoo of justice and punished thieves, liars, criminals, and evildoers. His attributes are thunderbolts, the double axe, the ram, the color red of fire. And again, you see a lot of the same things, the same attributes dealing with Shango in the Ifa tradition. Akbar, this is the Voodoo of the sea. Tavondun, he is also known as Hu. He is represented by a serpent and a symbol of everything that gives life. One of his power children is the Don Daksu, who manifests himself in the birth of a monster baby. Gul, this is the Voodoo of iron and war. So here was another similarity. Gul, here you see the same similarity in the Ifa tradition when you deal with Ogun. Ogun has some of the same thing when you deal with technology. He is the lesser deity of technology, the lesser deity of iron and war. So here is another similarity here. He is, and again, they are all close in proximity. Benin is close to Nigeria, which people say Benin and Nigeria is one and the same. So this is why you see some of the similarities in their traditions. He is the Voodoo who does not accept complacent with evil. Therefore, he is capable of killing all accomplices in acts of emphasis, and he is appealed to. This is the expression by the Fong saying Dagu Du, Dagu Du. Agun, this fifth son, is Matwa. He is the voodoo of agriculture and the forest. He reigns over animals and birds. Joe, this voodoo is characterized by invisibility. He is the voodoo of the air. Lekba, Legba, this is Mahu's youngest son. He receives no endowment at all because because all had already been shared out among his elders. He is jealous. He is whom loosens the rigid structures of the pantheon. He is the voodoo, he is unpredictable of what cannot be assigned to and others, and he is characterized by daily tragedies, all that is beyond good and evil. He Elekba, you can see he has similarities there. Lekba with Elekba in the Ifa tradition, one of the lesser deities, one of the Orishas. In the Fangbi or the Vudasi is a male and female servant of the Vudans. So those who are servants of the Vudan are called the Vudasi. And the Vudasi can be male or females and adapt or initiate followers of the Voodoo religions. Pronounced another way in the Vagbi Vudasi, and is translated as a person who belongs to and is under full protection and guardianships of the Voodoons. Generally, one is chosen by the Voodoons as early as birth or at the stage of human development, childhood, adolescence, or adulthood. The Voudun's uh, Alex finds out that he or she is chosen by the Voodoo through close observation and events, making his or her life subsequently by consulting the Fa, the system of divination. So here you have Fa. That sounds familiar, right? And the divination system in Nigeria is called Ifa. And in the Voodoo system, it is called Fa, the system of divination through Bokon, Bokonon, Bokonon, brutality interpretation of the Fa. And again, Benin and Nigeria, people say Benin and Nigeria are one and the same. They are in close proximity. Okay, Voodoo has a system of divination system too. And this slide here is off the first presentation that I did on Voodoo 2 years ago. Voodoo has a system of a divination system to a similar to the Yoruba people that practice Ifa. Again, their divination system, the Yoruba people is Ifa, the people in Benin, the Fan, the U, uh, their divination system is the Fa. Voodoo system of the divination is dedicated to the deity Fa, who was said to have represented the tribe with some special palm nuts brought down from the heavens. The divination is both system is supposed to throw the nuts from hand to another and depends on whether it remains nuts were odds or even marks down, either one or two marks of the powder scattered on the divination board. Same way in the Ifa tradition. It is thus pattern traced the board, which provides the data from the interpretation of the oracle of Ifa, of the oracle of Fa. To become a Voodasi proper, and again, a Voodasi is the servants of the Vooduns. And it can be male or female. Proper, one must receive initiation during an internship that lasts to 3 years in the Voodoo convent known as the Voodaks, home of the Voodoo. Hunox, exoteric, a blood pack home. Hung Kampam, blood pack enclosure. And again, excuse me if I'm mispronouncing the words. A Voodoo Kampam, Voodoo enclosure. Upon entering the Hungax, the Hung Kuwu, the new members is possessed by the Voodoo and she or he becomes a Voodasa ipso facto, more precisely Handiva, he or she who has entered the covenant. However, initiate is a long process that has several stages. During this first 3 months, the newcomer is Hudoto, a new member awaiting initiation, and the Kajaka, one more god having joined the existing gods. That is the neophyte. The covenant of the neophyte is trained under the supervision of the head of the house and the Kangan, the rope master, or he who enforces discipline. This is a STEM training centered where the elect is initiated into the Amutum rites of principles of the Vooduns to whom he or she is concentrated for his or her whole life. Before a neophyte is introduced to anything in the covenant, he or she must take a vow of loyalty of absolute secrecy. So you see, this is an initiatory rite that one must go through. And you see this in uh, the college background where you are being initiated into these Greek fraternities. We are not Greeks, but we are, a lot of us have been initiated into these Greek fraternities where we have to go through these different initiatory rites and we are vowed to some type of secrecy. I am a brother of the craft. I am a Mason. So we have to go through these different stages as well. And these stages can last from 3 to 6 months. It just all depends on the initiate. So you go through these different steps. And then once you go through these different steps, you are vowed to loyalty and you are allowed to certain types of secrecy. And for more information on the initiatory rites on the voodoo or the Vodun system, more information on the initiatory systems, you can go to the Encyclopedia of African Religion by Molife Kente Ashante for more information on the initiatory rites. I didn't want to go too deep. This is, and the girl, this is a neophyte on the right hand side. This is another picture of a neophyte on this side. Here is a young male voodoo initiate. So these are some of the initiates, and these are some of the things that takes place during initiates. And you can see this in some other African cultures as well, where the heads are being shaved and the body hair is being shaved when you're going through the process of being initiated. Voodoo in Haiti. So we talked about the origin of voodoo. So we know Vodoun comes from, Voodun means spirit or the essence of God or deity. We know voodoo comes from the word Voodun. We know Voodun originated in West Africa, Benin. You see it practiced in Benin, Togo, and Ghana. You see via the Atlantic slave trade, where it was Voodoo was brought to these plantations, the sugar plantations, um, and it was practiced and it changed its name. It kind of merged into something different. It became voodoo through the synchronicities of the slave master religion, i.e. Christianity. Via this Catholic Catholicism. So they began to synchronize voodoo or voodoo with the Catholic Christianity religion to hide it, because their way of life became outlaw. It was against the law for them to practice it, and certain things, beatings, hangings, crucifying, torture, all types of things if they was to practice their own indigenous tradition. So this is how it ended up in Haiti via the Atlantic slave trade, also in Brazil and so forth. And you can see some of it through the Santeria tradition. So the voodoo in Haiti. So this is how it ended up in Haiti via the Atlantic slave trade. So voodoo designated the indigenous religions of Haiti, emerging out of the contact between enslaved Africans and white planters during Haiti colonial period from 1492 to 1804. So we know that the slave trade started earlier than 1492, but officially jumped off in 1492 when they started to traffic them into other different countries. So voodoo is fundamentally an African religion, which in Haiti, given the peculiar historical circumstances, combining in its theological, some Roman Catholic belief and practices. History. The theology of Africa onto the sugar plantations of San Domingo, or as Haiti was called during the colonial period. Few details survived about the communities of enslaved Africans during that period, and no one is sure how many Africans were brought to the colony, but generally estimated noted that there may have been nearly 1 million, as a significant number of them were brought to Haiti from Dahomey, modern day Benin, but others came from Nigeria, Guyana, the Congo, and Angola, as well as many other parts of West Africa. This is also a reason why most of us, you will see our most of us do a DNA test, you will see that we come from, majority of our bloodline comes from West Africa, um, via the Atlantic slave trade, but also Central Africa. There was Africans that was taken from Central Africa. Um, and for more information about that, you can check out on this channel, the Master Warrior Clan YouTube channel. Me and Sean talked about this a lot in previous presentations, but I detailed it a lot in the Portuguese in the Congo. So I talk about how the Portuguese came into the Congo. Their reference, one of their main objective was to spread Christianity and also trade with those in the Congo area, and how they converted the king into Christianity and signed his son off to study Christianity and to become a priest in Christianity. And then later on, and we see this a lot of the slave masters would convert the king and therefore convert the whole country into Christianity, uh, and so forth. But for more information about that, go to in the archives, the Portuguese in the Congo, and other presentations. Me and Sean talk about that as well. Hold on, let me see if I can. Okay, yeah. Despite the hardships of enslaved labor, they managed to preserve whole enclaves of West African religion traditions. For instance, the myth describing personas of the spirit of many of the rituals performed in the honor continues to bear the mark of Africa. In time, however, many of these was transformed and shaped Haitians' culture and religious life. One such transformation is an assimilation of the Roman Catholic tradition in Voodoo, largely African theology. So, but you begin to see Vodoun becomes Voodoo through the synchronicity. And again, I said I may do another presentation or I may do an article where I may detail about the 17th and the 18th century on how the Catholic Church began to push propaganda on the people who practice voodoo and on the system in general, and on how a British writer begins to write prejudiced things about the practice and people that practice this tradition that is called voodoo, and how they outlawed it because voodoo was the state religion, and the emperor, um, who was also an ex-slave, you know, tried to keep it as a state religion, and later on another emperor who wanted to have nothing to do with his African heritage and wanted to please the Catholic Church during the mid 18th century, where they began to set up these different types of laws to outlaw and to ban and to actually push this narrative that voodoo is demonic, and even push that they are still saying that these people sold their souls to the devil. All this perception of it being dark and demonic and satanic comes from the Catholic Church during the 18th century. So I may highlight that in an article or in another presentation. But in part one, I highlighted it over here in the United States, how certain books, European scholars, certain movies in Hollywood and the news push these certain narratives about African culture and African tradition, which voodoo is an African culture. I mean, it's an African tradition. So anyway, the transformation of assimilation of the Roman Catholic tradition into voodoo, largely African's theology. During the 17th and 18th century, the French colonial invaders regarded voodoo as an aberration and worked really to extract it from colonial life. Zealous French Catholic missionaries went to Domingo to convert the enslaved Africans to Christianity in the effort to eradicate African religion practice from the colony. And we see this throughout all of Africa. We see the French, we see the Dutch, we see the Portuguese, we see the Spaniard, we see the British come into Africa and try to convert the people to Christianity. So this is a reason why a lot of us is heavy into Christianity today, via colonialism, via slavery, and also the Arab. We can't let the Arab off when we look at the Sahara Coast slave trade or the Barber Coast slave trade, as well. So same thing. You know, they teaching that their our way of life is not right. So they give us all these different derogatory terms when it comes to our traditions: fetish, primitive, um, animistic, uh, all these other different derogatory terms that they give our traditions, and they convert us or convince us that their way of life is the right way of life, that their gods is better than our gods. You know, the police ruling of 1757 enslaved African resorts to items that might have had ritualistic use. These rulings also prohibited the enslaved Africans from congregating in remote places, especially in absence of the Catholic priest or in the civil service. The servitude of these laws drove African religion practice underground. We see this over here in the United States as well, where a lot of our way of life made it over here, but it was outlawed. So we went underground to practice um, our own traditions, to prevent the officiants and interference of the white owners of their religious rituals. The Africans learned to match their African traditions with the venues of the symbols and rituals of the Catholic Church. The effect, so you start to see a lot of their lesser deities become the saints of the Catholic Church or certain denominations of Christianity. Um, so Shango may become Saint John. You know, Ilakba may become Saint Peter's. I'm just giving you certain examples. So they will hide um, their traditions in with the slave master or the colonizer tradition, because again it was outlawed, and penalty may be death if you practice your own tradition. Penalty may be torture. Penalty may be hung. Penalty may be burnt at the stake. Penalty may be your balls cut off. Penalty may be some type of uh, horrendous crime, views beyond which they could conceal their African religion practice. In time, they succeeded in realizing a religious amalgam, amalgam in which they not only learned to integrate religion practice underground. Here is the Haitian voodoo practitioners. To, to prevent the efficient interference of the white owners in their religious rituals, the Africans learned to match their African traditions with the veneer symbols and rituals of the Catholic Church, the effects that concern the Catholic symbols as the white mask over black face, veils behind which they could conceal their African religion's practice. In time, they succeeded in realizing and religious. When I'm reading the same slide, I created the same slide, but y'all get the gist of that. In 1896, 1913, and again in 1941, the Catholic Church, with an assistance of a local police, conducted what is called the anti-superstition campaign, in which it sought to burn voodoo temples and rituals, paraphernalia throughout the country. Also, catechism that was written by the Catholic clergy and questions answers forming the children's and adults were made to memorize, uh, uh, circulate widely through the country. So, and again, I may do an article or I may come back and do a presentation on how all of this started in the 18th century and on down, how the Catholic Church made a smearing campaign, pushed propaganda, prejudiced views, and came up with this anti-superstition campaign where they began to set up different laws. They began to burn down voodoo temples, different paraphernalia, you know what I'm saying, and so forth. And abolished the voodoo by encouraging Haitians to renounce their superstition practice. And again, during this particular time in Haiti, voodoo was the state religion. So they wanted to make Christianity the state religion in what's the name. So they began to set up these different laws and this anti-superstition campaign, and to convince people that their way of life was not the way to go, and that the slave master or the colonizer way of life was the way to go. Uh, the abolishment of voodoo by encouraging Haitians to renounce the superstition practice, to renew their vows with the Christian church, to abandon their services to the voodoo loas. So again, in the Vodun tradition in West Africa, they are the Voduns, and in the Haitian tradition of voodoo, they are called the Luas. And these are the lesser deities, which are the forces in nature, and to promise to raise their children according to the teachings of the Catholic Church. And again, the Loals or the Vooduns are nothing but the forces in nature. And again, these forces in nature, the air, wind, fire, water, you know, all these different things, darkness, light, all these different things are told in mythos, told in the story format, you know. So these forces of nature begin to get names, you know what I'm saying, and personified as different things that we see on an everyday basis, so we can understand the mythos that are being conveyed. We see human beings on a daily, we see trees, we see grass, we see animals, we see plants, we see certain things. So certain these mythos were told by things that we see or identify with on a daily basis. And for more information you can about this, you can go to the Encyclopedia of African Religion by Molifa Kente Ashanti and Ama Mazuma. Popular Western novels, films, and spirits accounts by tourists have depicted voodoo and derivative voodoo incorrectly as sorcery, ritual zombification, and ritual cannibalism. And again, we see a lot of this in the movies, but also I'm going to highlight in the article or either in the presentation, probably an article about how they resorted or how voodoo got identified with cannibalism. A story of how this British writer wrote about these four voodoo initiates, so-called killed a 12-year-old child and then cut the body parts up and ate it. Now, this is a story that was told by a British writer. And also, this was also around the time of the superstition campaign of the Catholic Church to demonize voodoo, to put this certain type of dark stigma on the people and the people that practice voodoo. They are satanic. You know what I'm saying? They sold their soul to the devil. They are still pushing this narrative to the day. Even with what happened in voodoo a few years ago, they are saying that happened because of the people, the Haitians, set a pact with the devil. All this comes from the Roman Catholic Church. All this perception about voodoo, all these things that we think about voodoo comes from the Roman Catholic Church during the 18th century. So I'm going to highlight a lot of those different things in an article or a presentation. I don't know which one I'm going to do yet, but be on the lookout for that coming. Sometimes I'm not going to give a date because I don't know when, but just be on the lookout for that. To the uninitiated, voodoo has long been thought of as a primitive form of magic and belief in ghosts. Most of what average layman's known of voodoo comes only from misleading use in its Hollywood horror movies. So again, we learn also a lot of this over here in America about voodoo, or the misleading conception about voodoo from the movies. You know, a lot of the movies, you know, we see um there's so many different uh um things that they portray about voodoo, misleading things at that. And in paper and paperback thrillers that emphasize, right, in also these paperback thriller books, which doctors or sticks or pins in voodoo dolls. Here is just some more visuals of some of the Haitian practitioners in Haiti. Some type of dance ritual here. These are references right here. Cyclopedia of African Religion by Molif Kenti Ashanti and Amma Muzuma. The Secret of Voodoo by Milo Rago. AfricanHolocaust.net. Kikide Trip Down Memory Lane. Uh, and also another order, npr.org templates. Um, these was a few references that I used. I could have used many other references because in my part one I used tons and tons of references. I also left out another book that I should have put it that I got some information in. So now on part two, we know that, but also we knew this on part one for those that might have looked at part one that I did about 2 years ago. We know that Vodoun means spirit, deity, or the essence of God. We know that Voodoo originated in West Africa. You can see it practiced in Benin, Togo, and in Ghana. We know Voodoo reached the islands and the United States, Brazil, Haiti, um, and Louisiana via the Atlantic slave trade on these sugar plantations. And we know Voodoo and voodoo, or voodoo comes from voodoo, but voodoo became voodoo during the synchronicity of the slave trade, where they began to synchronize the slave master religion, Catholicism, with their own tradition. Excuse me. Um, we also know that a lot of the perception of voodoo, we have misleading perceptions. We have uh, um, dark perceptions about the traditions via the Roman Catholic Church, via here in the United States, Hollywood, and their small books thriller, pushing these prejudice, prejudice narratives, these misleading narratives about the tradition. Hope that the presentation, someone learned something from the presentation. I hope somebody got something from the presentation. I wanted to hold on. Let me get Sean in here. I'm finna get you in here now, Sean. Hold on, y'all.
I'm here.
All right, I see you. Yeah. So again, hope y'all got something out of this. Understand where a lot of the misleading perceptions come from, dealing with our culture and dealing with our tradition. Voodoo is a West African tradition, a voodoo, which became voodoo and spread it Brazil, um, Haiti, Louisiana, and so forth. Sean, y'all got anything? Anybody in the chat got any questions?
Man, you did a good job, bro. I do want to say this though. When you were mentioning syncretism, somebody wanted to infuse didn't have nothing to do with this presentation, but they wanted to infuse the Neteru into syncretism, stating that Mary, Joseph, and all of them were representatives of the Neteru. And I'm like, no, that's false.
Hmm.
That's New Age information. That's something that the African American Harlem Egyptian created.
Right.
But
Right.
teaches is misinformed. When the Greeks and the Romans came into Kemet, well, were the Greeks first, of course. But when these people started coming in and they started to uh, do their thing during the Alexandrian time, excuse me, when their version of syncretism began, it had nothing to do with the Neteru. This was the development of Serapis.
Mm-hmm.
This was the end all be all deity. This
Mm.
was, you know what I'm saying? So when we say Serapis worship, this is what I was saying into the actual chat when that was going on. The stretch of Serapis worship went from that northeast region all the way to the other part of North Africa, almost to the Morocco, down to the sub-Saharan area part where the Berbers were. And the
Mm.
reason that happened is because the Berbers were so into all these different things that everybody that they came across, traded with, did business with, or brokered with, as far as the Saharan trade goes, they adopted some of their cultures and perspectives because of trade.
That's right.
So because they ran into all of these people, they needed to have some commonality. And
Right.
I have evidence that I can show at another time, showing you these particular Berbers that were dealing with certain things. There's this thing called the 21 Crosses that we were dealing with last week that I was going to bring out, but it just made no sense to bring it out because it had something to do with those Berbers. And those 21 crosses did not represent Christianity per se. Those 21 crosses represented locations. But in looking at the 21 crosses, we discovered that these were culture vultures. The Berbers were, and they synchronized all these different things into their own little thing, but they had their own little traditional systems as well, which was a nature worship, which was similar to what you see all over the continent of Africa. Now,
Mm.
this is why I say Mary and Joseph and all of that is because these people were literal people to the people that created these things.
Mm.
Jesus is a literal figure. So how could you syncretize literal people into the Netzeru, which were not literal people?
And you don't
So
you don't get the Greeks until 320. You don't get the Greeks until 320 BCE when you see the Alexandria area come in. I mean, the Netherus had been the Netherus or the Netherus or whatever which I don't like to use comedic what they call the system, comedic science or whatever
yeah, that ain't
whatever
even
the,
no dang on. Yeah, that's
Hey,
bogus.
hey,
yeah.
Sean, with what you just said, would you argue that this is when a monotheistic view would be forced upon that region as far as the natural inhabitants? Or
That's the evidence of the Greco-Roman monotheistic perspectives come in because of Serapis. It
Right.
is a clear indicator of a monotheistic worldview because of Serapis. People want to go back and they want to infuse Akhenaten and say that, well, this is the earliest of that. But no, what Akhenaten did was he, yes, used a, well, I don't want to say it the wrong way, but you know, it's not the same. So
organized a political idea. Can you
yeah,
say that? And I
yeah,
asked
you can
that
say
straight.
you can,
I
you can
asked
say
that. You
that.
went straight to it, and I asked that question solely for the chat because I knew where you was going with it. But you know how I do. I like to, ask those questions as if I'm in the chat. So you hit it right on the head where I was going next.
Yeah, but now that's where you see the earliest monotheistic worldview.
Right.
Um,
And
people want to misconstrue that.
mm,
So you ask them, you can ask them the source of, but good luck. And even in their literature, these Greeks and Romans and these Europeans that are writing certain things in their literature, like the Egyptian gods and what's the book I got? From a certain period of BC to 320 AD. Even in their work, when they're writing these things, they ain't saying none of that about the Neteru. They writing these things and they ain't saying none of what's being said up in them African American Egyptian communities. None. They are specifically stating, and then when they introduce Serapis to you, they are specifically telling you directly, look, this dude wanted to be worshipped like the deities in Kemet.
Alexander the Greek. Exactly. This is when you start to see the Serapis thing start to take place because he wanted to be worshipped as a deity as well. You know, you see this
And
if you
this is
go.
where you start seeing them not do the things that they were doing in Kemet no more, and you start seeing people leaving Kemet earlier than that, but you start seeing people leaving again because they started taxing the people, and they knew that the people that was there were foreigners. They're like, these are foreigners, these ain't the original people. But in the Dagger Squad chat earlier today, I asked a question to a bunch of people that was in the chat because they was talking crazy. Well, not really crazy in the chat, but Vasa was in there because he was asking. I said, I showed it. Did I not, Vasa?
Nah, you showed it. You hit him right on the head with it.
I said, anybody, I asked, was anybody familiar with what's the dude name? Caracalla, the son of Septimus Severus. I asked that because he says, and let me see if I can give it to you straight. My bad. Let me see if I can get it to you straight. He said, all Egyptians who are in Alexandria, especially peasants, whoever have fled from elsewhere and can easily be found, must in every possible way be driven out, except, however, the traders and pigs, rivermen, and those who bring down reeds for heating the baths. Drive out the rest, whoever be mere numbers, and for no good bring the city in uproar. I learned that, listen to what he says. I learned that at the festival of Serapis and on certain days of feast, or even, hold on, let me see. And it says certain days of feast, the days the Egyptians are accustomed to being down bulls or other beasts for sacrifice. So they're bringing down the bulls and other beasts for sacrifice during the Serapis festival. It says, in this matter, they are not to be restrained. Those are to be banned who have fled from their native place. Listen, those are to be banned who have fled from their native place to avoid their farm duties. Not, however, those who gather here to see the sights of the most glorious city of Alexandria, or who come down to for the sake of more urban life or occasional business. Then he goes on to say, in regard to the linen weavers, the real Egyptians may easily be recognized by their dialect, or else their features and build reveal them to be different from others. Then he closes. Besides, their way of living shows that the peasants are alien to the city life. So this dude, Caracalla, is telling us that there is a clear distinction between the original Egyptians, the people that were already there, and the people that are there now who are foreigners, who are running the land. He said the original people who have been there, the indigenous, fled. So this is where people start to get confusing, is when you start dealing with the history, the historicity of all of these things. Now, going back to why am I even bringing this back to the point? The mere point is what you just did with voodoo, Vodoun, and you talked about syncretism, is the fact that when it left West Africa, it became another system among the Haitians. It became another system among the Africans in the Americas, who then in life turned into hoodoo. So you would see voodoo, go to Vodoun, go to hoodoo.
Can I chime in for just a second?
Go ahead.
With everything Sean just said and what Kofi showed y'all, please understand that everything that happened to us was political and economical. Sean often says it was trade, but you have to understand that was the economics of the day. Us combating what we would call religion now was our attempt to psychologically combat these things. And that's where the mix-up gets confused for all of us, and inflation and syncretism and all that. So once you slow this stuff down, I don't want to get too long with it. Once you slow this stuff down, you can clearly see it. But please understand that we have to go beyond just religious talk and start talking economics and political powers as well in these conversations. I'm gonna chop back out. But Sean, you see why I asked the question about what they was using to execute people and the
Yeah.
symbolism behind that. Do you kind of see where I
Yeah,
was
the
going?
bull,
Yeah.
the benzonine bull or whatever you said. Yeah.
Yeah.
So back to the point, because I don't want to confuse anyone in the chat about the show. Please go back, review the presentation. This is part two. It's a pretty good presentation as far as Sister Anjai in the chat. You know what I'm saying? We respect you. We know you could be a little on the pseudo side with the information. You're not going to find no three Marys. There's no three Marys in Kemet. Mary is not no offset in Kemet. Saying something looks like something is not evidence. We need to be very careful. This is one of the arguments that Ben has in an earlier presentation that was done on this show months ago when he talked about religion and so on and so forth. Because these systems, what you're doing is you're trying to compare a traditional African system to a non-African system. And you're doing it a disservice when you're cross comparing these systems. And then you're belittling the African system to that of a Greco-Roman influence system to try to say that they got certain things from there. Well, these cultures borrow from other cultures all the time due to trade. So it's not one system that they're borrowing from. There's syncretistic systems from all over in that region. So you have to deal with all the other regions and not ignore all the other regions. We can't say that everything came from Kemet. That's hyperdiffusionist. That is pseudoscience. So we have to be careful, very careful.
Yeah.
So again, Kofi, that's all I really got right there, man. Good presentation. Check out Kofi Piesie TV later today in about 3.5 hours. 3.5 hours. 3 hours and 45 minutes. I think Vasa is going to be live doing a discussion bill, whatever the case may be. Kofi won't be there, I don't think, but the show will be up, and Vasa will be leading the way with that. Tune in, like the
Yeah.
show, share the show, subscribe to the channel.
Tonight we want to
We're
do
doing everything we can to bring it.
Tonight we want to do a show, and it's an
ahead.
open discussion. And I want to see y'all there because it's important, and we need to have this mind frame over the next week, preparing for the next year. What is Black success? We need to define it, we need to stamp it, and we need to reinsure that we're going to pursue it. So that's what the conversation will be predicated about. I really, really wanted Brother Kofi there. I was going to hold out on it, but Sean put me on the spot. Since he put me on the spot, I'm putting everybody here that can hear my voice on the spot. If you truly, truly care about yourself, your brothers, your sisters, and your people, we hope to see you there. Because this is something that is going to have take place, and it's going to have to involve all of us on one accord. So we hope to see y'all tonight.
Yeah. Yeah, I ain't gonna be there, man, but they gonna lead the way. And it's gonna be a powerful discussion, man. I have to catch it in the archives. I wish I could have been a part of it, but something came up. But it's all good. Also, with the comparing of different religions with the African religions, I did something on there 3 months ago. It's called confusion, misunderstanding, ignorance about African traditions. So you can go back. I kind of compare it to some of the African traditions with the Western religions. So I did some comparing and breaking down some things. So, if y'all want to go check that one out, go check that one out. Confusion, misunderstanding, ignorance about African traditions. Where people, it's just, dealing with people always trying to compare Western religion with African tradition. So, um, again, appreciate y'all for tuning in. Y'all could have been doing anything else with y'all time, but y'all tuned in to check out what we had going on, man. So we appreciate y'all, man, and hope to see y'all back this evening, man, at 6 o'clock, man, on Kofi Piesie TV with brother Vasia, brothers Eni Sean Calfani, and hopefully we'll have a few other people on the panel as well as some of the Kofi Piesie TV family and affiliates on the panel as well. Again, please support, support, support. Please subscribe, subscribe, subscribe. Um, that's all I have, man. Again, man, Black African Power, man, and we'll see y'all next week. I don't know what I'll be coming with next week, but I'll be doing something next week on both channels. Also be looking forward for the presentation probably in the next 2 weeks, the Faru presentation with me and Brother Ben. Hopefully with Brother Ben if his schedule conflict. If not, I'll go on and do the presentation. I've been bringing y'all a lot of, shouldn't be no excuses now. We're just saying African spirituality. I don't like to really use the term African spirituality. African spirituality was coined by the diaspora African or the African America or the African in America. We coined that phrase African spirituality because we have been displaced and we don't know what part of Africa we coming to. There's no excuse not to know exactly where you descend from in West Africa now, but a lot of us don't know exactly where we come from in West Africa. So we use the term African, we use the term African spirituality, but those traditions have different names. I done gave you the Igbo tradition with the Odinani. I done gave you the Chewy people with the Gulu Wankulu. I done gave you another tradition. We talk about Vodoun becoming voodoo through synchronicity. I gave you the Winti tradition in the Caribbeans with the voodoo, with the Akum system, merging with the Christianity with slave master religion. I also gave you the Akum tradition in Ghana, the Ifa tradition in Nigeria, and some other different traditions. So, you can go back and check those out in the Masi Warrior Clan archives on YouTube or the Kofi Piesie TV channel on YouTube, so you can kind of get familiar. It's a bunch of them, so I'll be coming back with the Senegal tradition, the Sira people, the Fataru tradition. And some more other traditions I gave. So maybe once y'all get in there and I start going down the list and giving you more, we can kind of start giving and pronouncing the names of these traditions instead of saying African spirituality. We can actually say the
Kofi,
names.
stop right there. Stop right there. After today's show, just to simplify, would it be wrong for us to argue, just start saying your African essence?
Yeah, we
Let's keep it in the show.
Yeah.
Let's get in touch with your African essence, your true essence. Get in. I didn't mean to cut you off, Kofi.
Oh no, you good, man. But again, Black African Power, man. Modupe, Dua, which means thanks, thank you. So I appreciate. So we'll see y'all again, man, this evening, man, and we'll see y'all again next weekend. I may pop up and do something during the week while I'm off or whatever, man. But it's good to be back. So peace.